Hi, this is Mark Graven. This is episode 23 of Lean Blog Audio for February 23rd, 2015. Today's post is titled, Accountability Shouldn't Mean Blaming People for Things Out of Their Control. Accountability is a word that's really easy to throw around in an organization, and it's often pretty meaningless or it's not well understood. What do we mean by that word accountability? Now, people love saying things like, we need a culture of accountability, and we need to hold people accountable. But when I hear that phrase, I like to call time out and actually ask people, well, wait a minute, what do you mean exactly? What do you mean by accountability? Give me an example of what this translates to in real action. And it often catches people off guard. They often don't know. It's just this phrase that's easy to throw around. Now, talking about accountability sounds nice. Leaders love talking about holding others accountable, even if they're not personally being accountable for much of anything themselves. Unfortunately, in practice, the word accountability is often corporate speak for let's blame and punish people. I mean, nobody really walks around saying things like, we need a culture of blaming and punishing people for systemic problems, or we need to blame and punish people. But that's often what's being done, what's being said under the guise of accountability. It's a code word. It's a way of saying things that aren't supposed to be said. So what does the word mean in a dictionary definition? Two definitions we often see. One is required to explain actions or decisions to someone. And the second is required to be responsible for something. So that first part of accountability, to give an account, to explain actions or results, I think that's interesting. When we say we want accountability, we're usually not asking people to just explain what happened or what goal wasn't met. They're being asked to be responsible. We're trying to hold them responsible. But can we really ask frontline staff to explain or be responsible for system problems like emergency department waiting times? Can we ask frontline managers to be accountable for systemic problems? I think when leaders throw out a solution, such as we need more accountability, how do we know that a lack of accountability is somehow really a root cause of the problem at hand? Saying we need more accountability is sort of a polite, coded way of saying or passing judgment that my people aren't trying hard enough or my employees don't care. And those things are usually untrue, by the way, and they're awful things to say. I'd argue instead of more accountability, leaders need to work together with employees to improve the system that people are working in. I think the list of things that people can be held accountable for is actually pretty limited in most workplaces. What are the things that you really have control over? Well, maybe you can hold someone accountable for showing up to work on time more often than not. Although occasionally an unexpected system problem might get in the way. But if an employee is often 5 or 10 minutes late to work because of traffic variation, I think they can be held accountable and they can take action to leave home earlier, even if that means arriving to work early some days when traffic's not real bad. But looking at more complex situations, I think it's harder to simply hold people accountable. When we blame and punish people for not hitting targets, senior leaders might think that they're, quote, holding people accountable. But look at situations like the 4-hour A&E or emergency department waiting times and targets in the British NHS. Now, people get blamed and punished, so they end up gaming the numbers and distorting the system by doing things like holding patients outside of A&E to prevent the clock from starting, or by admitting patients after 3 hours and 55 minutes, even if it wasn't necessary. Senior leaders need to help people improve the system, not just hold them accountable. So why are there long waiting times in an emergency department? It's often a very systemic value stream problem. It has root causes in outside agencies like long-term care or nursing homes not having enough capacity. This was a big problem when I worked with an Ontario hospital in Canada a few years back. The ED was all backed up and people were being blamed. Well, why was it backed up? Because they couldn't discharge enough inpatients. Why was that? Because there weren't enough long-term care beds in the community. Why was that? They said, well, there are government budget constraints. So in that setting, no amount of accountability or blame for the emergency department or even the hospital is going to fix that problem. Last year, VA clinics were being held accountable for patient appointment waiting times, but the goal was deemed unrealistic by the federal government and the VA itself. It's unfair to hold people accountable for goals that are unachievable or out of their control. So I'd encourage you to try a similar exercise in your organization. When you hear people use the word accountability, ask them to step back and define what they mean exactly. Are they just blaming and punishing or threatening punishment? Or are they working to create a system in which people can choose to be accountable, to truly be responsible and accountable? Are these leaders working together to succeed with their employees instead of just making things look good? So if you want to see some of the links to the things I've referenced here, I wrote a separate post last year called Lean, Deming, and Accountability that I would invite you to look at. And I have a graphic that I've created with this phrase about holding people accountable, punishing people, targets, things like that. If you want to go see that image, it's the type of thing that you can maybe share on social media and help spread this message about needing to work together with people instead of just blaming them. That would be appreciated. So again, you can go to leanblog.org/audio23 to see that, to see the post, and to learn more about how to subscribe. Thanks.
Podcasts are sponsored by KaiNexus, where we're passionate about helping the world improve and innovate more effectively with our web-based software. Learn more at www.makeimprovementhappen.com.